Okay, last time we started a discussion about mezuzah, the obligation of mezuzah. We discussed what type of a room is obligated in mezuzah. The room has to have a mezuzah, you need 4 amas by 4 amas, which is 6 feet by 6 feet. Some poskim say 6 feet by 6 feet is 36 square feet. Many opinions say that if you have 18 by 2 or 9 by 4, you would also need a mezuzah. So therefore, the din is you would put up there, but without a bracha, because it's questionable if that actually needs a mezuzah. Now you need to make sure, as we discussed last week, that the mezuzah is a kosher mezuzah. And the kosher mezuzah takes a long time to write, and then, like we said last time, if there's a tiny mistake, you have to start all over again. So mezuzahs, the parchment's expensive. You need to make sure you buy kosher mezuzahs, and you buy the kosher mezuzahs from reliable people that are not selling non-kosher mezuzahs. Okay, it says that whoever is very meticulous in a mezuzah lives long, and therefore the custom is when you go out of the house or when you come into the house, in Halacha it says the expression, you put your hand on the mezuzah. Some people also kiss the mezuzah. We know by the Rebbe, whenever the Rebbe walked by a room with the mezuzah, the Rebbe just touched the mezuzah. He didn't actually kiss the mezuzah. If they tell a story with the Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov, when he walked by mezuzah, would touch the mezuzah and kiss it. One time the Baal Shem Tov walked by a mezuzah and he just touched it. He didn't kiss it. So they were surprised, like what happened? So they took down the mezuzah, they checked it, and they realized it wasn't a kosher mezuzah. They understood that's why the Baal Shem Tov didn't, he always kissed the mezuzah, but now he actually just touched the mezuzah. But the Rebbe didn't, what we saw openly, the Rebbe didn't kiss the mezuzah, the Rebbe basically touched the mezuzah. Now, what happens if somebody doesn't have enough money, let's say just to show the importance of mitzvahs? What happens if you have enough money either for mezuzahs or for tefillin? So the din is, if you can borrow somebody else's tefillin, so then you have to buy a mezuzah. What happens if it's a question of mezuzah or lulav, mezuzah or sukkah? Then mezuzah comes first. So that's how important the mitzvah of mezuzah is, that if it's the choice between mezuzah and lulav, mezuzah comes first. A person who's supposed to have mezuzahs and doesn't put up mezuzahs transgresses a positive commandment in the Torah, and according to certain opinions, every day. Which means there's a mitzvah in the Torah, you have to write the mezuzah on your doorpost. So therefore, if you're not writing the mezuzah on the doorpost, you're transgressing a positive mitzvah of the Torah. But it says like this, if you have another house, what happens? This house doesn't have a mezuzah, but another house that you own has a mezuzah, so then you're supposed to go out of your house without a mezuzah to live in the house that has a mezuzah. Now, the obligation of a mezuzah, by the way, is upon everybody, men, women, and children. Like if a kid has their own tree house, and many tree houses, you should know, might be 10 tefachim high, and I'll explain in a sec what that is, and 6 feet by 6 feet, even though it's the kids, but he still would have to put up a mezuzah. The kid himself would have to put up a mezuzah, or the adult would put it up for them. So women have an obligation to put up a mezuzah because it's a positive mitzvah, not connected to time. Any mitzvah, not positive mitzvah, not connected to time, so then the din is that you're obligated, the women are obligated also in the mezuzah. So that's the halacha that everybody needs to have a mezuzah. Now, the criteria of a room is, like we said, 6 feet by 6 feet, 10 tefachim high. Now, tefach is between 3 to 4 inches. So approximately, it's an halacha 36 inches. A room which is 36 inches high needs a mezuzah. If it's 6 feet by 6 feet, and it's 36 inches high, like I said, it could be a tree house, it could be a small shed. A shed that's 6 feet by 6 feet, and the 10 tefachim high, 36 inches high, you would need a mezuzah. And if it has a door in the shed, you'd probably have to make a bracha also, even though it's questionable. But there's an obligation of a mezuzah even on those places. Another interesting din is you have to put a mezuzah on a vertical door, not on a horizontal door, which means most doorways are vertical, up and down. Many people in their houses have a trap door that goes to the basement. Or if anybody goes on Kingston Avenue in New York, you know, they would have outside the stores, they'd have those metal doors that you would open up for the go downstairs to the storehouse. So anything which is a horizontal door does not need a mezuzah. A mezuzah only has to be put on a vertical door, not on a horizontal door. Another important thing before we go into where to put the mezuzah and all the details, Halacha says like this: a private mezuzah, it means in your house or your own personal mezuzah, needs to be checked twice in 7 years. Why did you use the word twice in 7 years? I don't know. But Halacha says, which means every 3.5 years, a person has a halachic obligation to check their mezuzahs. A public mezuzah, like a mezuzah of a shul, once every 50 years, a public mezuzah has to be checked. A private mezuzah, twice in 7 years. The Rebbe mentioned many times that the Mata Ephraim, who was a great codifier, especially in the laws of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, he brings down that it's appropriate, Anshe Meiser, people of great people, would check their mezuzahs every Elul, every year of Elul. And in the month of Elul of every year, they would check the mezuzahs yearly. Now, what happened, we know, the Rebbe told many people that certain times they had issues, the Rebbe tell them to check the tefillin and mezuzahs. But sometimes the Rebbe would say, if it wasn't checked in the last year. In other words, if somebody is having problems and the mezuzahs weren't checked for a year, the mezuzahs and tefillin should be checked. That's what the Rebbe wanted. I had myself a personal story. After I got married, I was living in New York, and I checked my mezuzahs. And then my wife became pregnant with my oldest daughter. So I wrote into the Rebbe, and they came back, the mezuzahs were good. My wife became pregnant, so I wrote a letter into the Rebbe asking a bracha for the pregnancy. So the Rebbe answered, I should check my tefillin and mezuzahs. It was like a few weeks before I'd already checked the mamash, a few weeks. So the Rebbe told me to check the tefillin and mezuzahs. So I brought it back to the Sefer. Then there was one Sefer in Crown Heights. I brought it back to the Sefer, and he looked at me and he said, the Rebbe told you to check them? Because he remembered I just checked them. I said, yeah, the Rebbe told me to check them. So he checked the tefillin and mezuzahs, and he found, not God forbid something possible, he found something wrong that needed to be fixed. So I said to him, I don't understand. You just checked my tefillin and mezuzahs. It wasn't the mezuzahs he found something wrong. I said, you just checked my mezuzahs a few weeks ago. You told me they're good. So what happened all of a sudden that you found something that needs fixing? Not God forbid possible, but just that it needed to be fixed. And he told me that when the Rebbe tells to check, they look differently. They look completely differently. They look much better and more meticulous. Yeah, it was kosher. There wasn't a question about it. But the Rebbe said to check, so they would look more meticulously. So the Rebbe wanted that tefillin should be checked, mezuzah should be checked, preferably every year.
Did they find something wrong?
What?
Did they find something wrong?
No, they didn't find something wrong. They just found something that should be fixed.
Oh.
I mean, they're just to make it better. Okay. Now, when does a person need to put on a mezuzah? Okay, let me tell you what Shulchan Aruch says, and then I'm going to tell you a very interesting Chabad minig about this. In Shulchan Aruch it says like this: I move into a house. When do I have to put up a mezuzah? So the din is like this: in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, whether you rent a house or buy a house, you have to put up mezuzahs right away with the bracha. Right away with the bracha. Whether you rent or buy in Eretz Yisrael, you need to make a bracha right away. Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, so it says in Shulchan Aruch like this: if you bought the house, you put up mezuzahs right away with a bracha. As soon as you move in, you make a bracha when you put up the mezuzahs. If you rent, so Shulchan Aruch says for the first 30 days, you don't need mezuzahs if you're outside of Eretz Yisrael. You don't need to have mezuzahs. But the Rebbe writes, and it's very interesting because the Rebbe in Sefer Minhagim it says that our custom is that when you move into a house, a rental, I'm talking about outside of Eretz Yisrael. If you move into a rental house, Chabad custom is we put up mezuzahs right away without a bracha. Right away without a bracha. On the 30th day, you change it for one mezuzah, for a better mezuzah, or the Rebbe somewhere writes, you check one mezuzah, and then when you put on a better mezuzah, or you put back up the mezuzah you checked, then you make a bracha on that mezuzah for all the doors in the house. But again, like we mentioned last week, it has to be a doorway that has a door, because otherwise you don't make a bracha on a mezuzah. And the Rebbe told people, I know Rabbi Grona, the Rebbe told, it's brought down, and Rabbi Reichik, Oliver Sholem, the Rebbe told him when he bought a house, the Rebbe wrote to him, you know our minig, that you put up mezuzahs right away without a bracha. On the 30th day, you change it for something better, or check it, and then you make a bracha. So the Chabad custom based on that is whether you're renting or buying, you put up mezuzahs right away without a bracha. On the 30th day, then you either change one for a better mezuzah, or you check a mezuzah, and then when you put it back up, then you put it back up, then you make a bracha. Now, a house, what happens if somebody has a partnership with a non-Jew? Sorry to say, this question is asked by a lot of mixed couple families, by the way, intermarried couples. So one of them is a Jew, one of them is not a Jew. Or somebody shares an office with a non-Jew. Or they have a dorm room, they're in a dorm in a university, and they share the room with a non-Jewish person. So what's the din? So the din is, in fact, without going into all the discussion about it, the practical halacha is you put up a mezuzah but without a bracha. You put up a mezuzah without a bracha. Now the obligation of mezuzah is not on the owner.
Wait, Rabbi Shusterman?
What?
What happens if you rent an Airbnb for a week, like you're going on vacation, and you've got you're taking a house or a rental somewhere?
I was going to come to that soon.
Okay.
Okay, but now that you asked it, okay. If you're not taking a house for 30 days, and you know to begin with you're not taking it for 30 days, you do not need a mezuzah. Somebody goes to a hotel, or if even they go on vacation to Israel, or to Israel for a few weeks. If you know you're not going to be there for 30 days, then you don't need to put up a mezuzah. It's only if you're going to be there for more than 30 days. Okay? Now, any place, a partnership, like we said, is obligated in the mezuzah. A partnership with a non-Jew is you should put up without a bracha. Okay, I don't want to mention that. Then that's not relevant. Okay, I just want to mention. Okay, another very important thing: when you put up a mezuzah, the mezuzah has to be holding firmly. If the mezuzah is, let's say, sometimes you have a mezuzah, you're knocking a nail on top, and you don't knock in a nail at the bottom, so the mezuzah can wave a little bit. That's not good. A mezuzah has to be firmly secured to the doorpost. Now, according to Halacha, if you use double-edged tape, double-sided tape, which a lot of people use, that's fine as long as it's holding firmly. If the mezuzah is shaking a little bit, you can shake it, it's not good. You have to fix it, and you have to put it up properly that it holds very firmly. Now, where on the doorway do we put up the mezuzah? Okay. Now, we learned last week, you put it on the right side. Okay, but the doorpost is, let's say 8 feet, 10 feet tall. Which is the proper place for a mezuzah? So the din is, the mezuzah is supposed to be at the bottom of the top third. That means, if you have a doorway, the best thing to do is to measure it. Sometimes it's 8 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is. You measure it, and then you divide it in 3, and the mezuzah has to be at the bottom of the top third. It doesn't mamish have to be at the bottom. It could be a little bit above the bottom of the top third. But the mezuzah should not be lower than the bottom of the top third. If not, you have to fix it. You have to take it off and put it back correctly. So you need to put it at the bottom of the top third. But the mezuzah must be a tefach, 3 inches or 4 inches off from the lintel on top. That means you can't put a mezuzah all the way on the top of the doorpost. It has to be at the bottom of the top third, and it has to be at least a tefach off from the top. Which, by the way, many people do this and it's incorrect. Many people have in their kids' bedroom, they want the kids to kiss the mezuzah. So the kids are little, they can't reach, up high. So they'll put the mezuzah lower, below the top third. If you put the mezuzah below the top third, it's not kosher. You can't, and again, the purpose of a mezuzah is not to kiss it. The purpose of the mezuzah is to be hanging properly on the door. And therefore, the kid can't reach it, let him get a little stool and stand on the stool to kiss the mezuzah. And if they can't, like they say, tough luck, you still can't put the mezuzah in a place which is not appropriate for the mezuzah. Now, what happens, here's a very interesting argument and discussion in Halacha. What happens, you come into these houses with very big doorways. 15 feet doorway, very tall doorways. So where do you put the mezuzah? If you have a 18-foot doorway, okay, and it's divided into 3, so it's 6 feet, so you're talking the mezuzah is going to be 12 feet, at least 12 feet from the floor. That's way above reach. Okay, 12 feet is most people out of reach. Now, so there's a machlekes in halacha. Some poskim write, you put it at bottom of the top third anyway. That's it, you put it at the bottom of the top third. Other opinions say no, if it's that tall, you put it shoulder length. You put it shoulder length. Shoulder height to me. The height of an average person's shoulder. Even though it will be below the bottom of the top third, but because it's such a tall doorway, you could put it at the shoulder height. There's a very interesting thing. They many years ago gave out a kid's pamphlet, and over there the Rebbe wrote, and the Rebbe looked it over, they said over there that you put it shoulder height. Later they found out that in the Rebbe Rashab's house in Rostov, now it's a yeshiva, but then it was interesting. The Rebbe Rashab lived there, and then the Goyim moved in, and Goyim moved in for many generations, 2 generations, whatever. And then when Russia was opened up. So they bought the Rebbe Rashab's house in Rostov, and they saw clearly that the mezuzahs on a tall doorway was at the bottom of the top third. So that's the question, what would the Rebbe hold now? We don't know. But the pearl, it seems that officially the minhag is that even if the doorway is very high, tall, you still put it at the bottom of the top third of the doorway, even though you're not going to be able to kiss it. Okay? But now you have another interesting scenario. And this is also very common. Sometimes you have like off a bedroom, what do you call it? Alcove? Is that what it's called? Something like that. You come in the side of a bedroom, is like this. The wall goes up, and then it goes up at an angle, like an archway. Okay? You have an archway, or you can, in the regular part of the house also. You have an archway between dining room, living room, between whatever room it is. Now, the wall goes up, and then it starts slanting, right? It starts arching. So where do you count the bottom of the top third from? So the din is, you don't count it from the arch. You count it from the part of the wall which was straight. So let's say the wall, for argument's sake, goes up 4 feet or 5 feet, and then you have the archway goes up another few feet. But the bottom of the top third is not on the arch part. That's not counted. The only thing that's counted is the straight wall up. So then you measure that wall. So let's say it's 4 feet. And you're going to have to put the mezuzah at the bottom of the top third of 4 feet, which means the mezuzah is going to be pretty low. But that's the halacha. That's where you have to put the mezuzah. If you put it on the arch, you're not yaitze. It's not good. You didn't do it. The mezuzah has to be on the door frame and the door, but the straight part of the door at the bottom of the top third. There was more. I want to mention another thing. Okay. Also, for instance, rooms leading to a bathroom, shower room, don't need mezuzah at all because it's disrespectful. Any place that you have which is like despicable places, things where you don't do nice things there or whatever, so then you don't need a mezuzah because it's not respectful for the mezuzah. Another important din, should have mentioned this before, the only time you need a mezuzah if there's 2 doorposts and there's a lentil on top. Okay? What happens if you have a gate? By the way, gates, it says clearly in the Chumash. A mezuzah is beisecha uvisharecha. Visharecha means your gates. So let's discuss a very simple thing. Many people in California have driveways next to the house. And you go into the driveway, and then you go under an archway. And then sometimes the archway could be, double archway, in fact. You can have an archway, and then the house, part of the house is over it, and then you have another archway. Those archways need a mezuzah. Obviously without a bracha, because you don't have a door. Because there's no door, you don't need a bracha and the mezuzah, but you have to put a mezuzah there. But what happens if you have a gate in your backyard? Actually a gate with 2 sides, but there's nothing on top. So then you don't need a mezuzah. The only time you need a mezuzah is when you have 2 side posts, what's called the mezuzahs, which are the door posts, and the mashkef, that's what it's called in Hebrew and Halacha. Mashkef means the lentil on top. That's when you need to put a mezuzah. No door, no bracha, yes door, a bracha, yes with the bracha. But the bottom line is that's when you actually need to put the mezuzah. Otherwise, you don't need a mezuzah in that place. In fact, there's a very interesting story. When the Friedrich Rebbe was taken to prison, Beis Talmud season now, he was taken to prison on the 15th of Sivan. So when the Friedrich Rebbe was in prison, the Jewish communists asked them, Rebbe, do you know where you are now? They wanted to show like, we're in control over you. So the Friedrich Rebbe answered, he brings it down in the Burim. The Friedrich Rebbe answered to them, I know where I am. I'm in a place that doesn't need a mezuzah, just like an animal stall doesn't. He said, just like an animal barn doesn't need a mezuzah. So that's the same type of place I'm in now. He called the jail an animal barn. But you see that's the when you need a mezuzah. Another interesting thing is, by the way, I know here in LA, there was a lady that donated mezuzahs to every door in Cedars. However, they should be kosher. But a shul, if you don't eat and sleep in the shul, then you really don't need a mezuzah. The custom is today we put mezuzahs up in the shul because people eat there. People sleep in the shul during your rabbi's speech. For sure they sleep. So then people need a mezuzah there. But a hospital, by the way, does not need a mezuzah. A hospital does not need a mezuzah because it's there's a lot of reasons why, but the bottom line is you don't need a mezuzah in a hospital. It's a clear din. Okay.
Old age home
What? Old age home where people live needs a mezuzah. Even, by the way, hospitals, machlekes, you need, most people halachically hold that you don't need in a hospital. There are people that hold you need a mezuzah in a hospital. But lepel, the minig is that you don't. Now, in somebody's businesses, so you have a business. So the business needs a mezuzah. That's what we hold. We paskin that a business needs a mezuzah. Now, many times, I'm going to finish this and then we'll go to Tanya. For many reasons, a Jew owns, let's say, a trade for restaurant. Trade for restaurant, a trade butcher store, whatever. And some of them are Israelis, they want a mezuzah on the door. So over there, it's inappropriate to put up a mezuzah. Because then somebody might think it's kosher. Somebody will think it's kosher. Generally, businesses is a machlekes, an argument in halacha if you need a mezuzah or not. So we hold that you put up a mezuzah even with the bracha. But if it's a trade for place, trade for restaurant, you don't want to put up a mezuzah there. But, by the way, if the owner has an office in the back, he should put up a mezuzah in his office because that people don't see. But you don't want people putting up mezuzahs. Okay, it's time for Tanya Mitzvah. Next week we'll continue to finish up about mezuzah and garages and all the other things.